Hello everyone, it's Helen from Journaling Planet, and today I'm going to be talking all about why journaling is really good for you and what kind of things you can write in your journal, how you can write in your journal. So stay tuned for that. With the death of my husband, I wasn't able to do the celebration video for reaching 2,500 subscribers as I'd hoped I would. And so this is kind of a belated celebration video for that. And thank you to all those people who have watched my video about how to make your own craft paper, because that has reached 27,000-ish views, which is, it feels like fame to me. So thank you so much if you've watched that. I'm going to start straight away, launch into the topic and talk about journaling for well-being, why it's good for you, and move on to how you can write in your journal. I have actually been studying and teaching journaling for about 20 years now. I did a dissertation on my psychology degree about 20 years ago about writing for well-being in journals and why it was good for us. And other people have done much more high profile work on this than I ever did. This was just kind of a school project, a college project. But here's some things that myself and other people have uncovered about journaling and why it is good for you. So journaling is good for disclosure and expression. What we mean by that is expressing your feelings, expressing your thoughts, disclosing things that perhaps you wouldn't disclose to anyone else verbally. In this way, a journal can act almost like a counselor. It is a safe space for you to write or draw anything that you want to. And because of that, the act of disclosure and expression frees us. It actually improves our well-being. It is good, as the saying goes, to get things off our chest. And journals can provide that just as well as another human being sometimes. So if you're somebody who lives quite an isolated existence, which is definitely true for me these days, or you perhaps don't feel like you can talk to someone about it, grab yourself a journal or make yourself a journal and start writing in it or drawing in it or creating pieces of mixed media art in it, whatever helps you to express what's going on for you right now, because that is a fantastic boost to your well-being. The other thing about journaling is that it's an immersion activity, and that goes for whether or not you're creating something that's visual in a journal or whether you're writing in a journal. What I mean by that is you are only focused on that task. You are immersed in it. You're not thinking about all the different things that are going on in your life unless you're journaling about them, in which case you're benefiting from the disclosure that we mentioned before. You are just focusing on that task and nothing else. And that is good for you. And a lot of mindfulness courses actually focus on trying to get people to do just that, to focus on one thing in the moment now. Journaling can do that for you. So if you haven't already started journaling, that is another reason to start today. The other good thing about journaling is that it is a physical space for you. Now, some people have digital journals. That's fair enough. I suppose it doesn't actually take up physical space in the real world, but you still need a device to do that. So I still would argue that it is a physical space to a certain extent for you to be able to record if you're doing like an audio diary or a video diary, or type if you are doing a digital diary in words, or creating something perhaps with a package that's an artistic package. You still need a device to do that. So it is a physical space for you. It is you saying, this is my space. I can do anything I want with it. There are no limitations, and it is just for me. That is a really amazing thing to carve out for yourself in a world where basically we all spend so much time running around trying to earn enough money to pay rent, looking after other people, caring for spouses and children and parents. It's very high pressure out there. So if you've got a space that is just for you, you're actually helping everyone around you even more, because you are keeping yourself in tip-top condition for caring for everyone else around you. So it's a positive. And the last thing that is really great about journaling, which is something that I have personally benefited from, and this has been all the way through my husband's cancer diagnosis through to his death, is that there is a journaling community out there. There are other people who journal, there are other people who make YouTube videos about it, and there are other people are doing it every day or every week or whenever they can manage. And we'll talk about that later. If you're one of those people who struggles with, but I can't do it every day, it's too difficult, I can't carve it out, we'll talk about that. So there is a community waiting for you, there is connection waiting for you in this particular discipline. And all it takes is for you to grab either a device, if you're going to do it digitally, or a notebook, or make your own journal if you're very creative. And I know lots of people are very creative. So you've got that space, and then that's it. You're part of the club. Welcome. Enjoy. Hope that gives you a sense of how journaling can be good for your well-being. Let's move on now to what kind of things we can write in the journal. This is not an exhaustive list, folks. You can write or create or draw or construct anything you want in a journal. But I do see people commonly asking what kind of things they could put in a journal that they made or bought. So here are some things that I talk to my students about and have done myself over the years that I've been journaling. So the first one is a free write. For those of you not familiar with that, it means that you literally set a timer for maybe 10 minutes and you just write. And you do not check yourself on grammar. It doesn't matter if you repeat yourself. You just write whatever comes into your head. It doesn't have to be coherent. It doesn't have to make sense. You are just expressing every single last stream of consciousness thought that runs through your head. Some people prefer to do a free write with a particular theme. So they might open a book off the shelf and take the first line and use that as a starting point for their free write. They might look at a particular painting and choose an element of it as a starting point for their free write. They might look out the window and see a particular object or part of the neighborhood and use that as a starting point for their free write. You can do whatever you want to do. The only rule is that you cannot stop the pen. The pen has to keep moving until the end of the time. So if you set a timer for 10 minutes, the pen has to move for 10 minutes. And that is the only rule. And that is the only rule. The second thing is a mind map. So those of you who've ever been in a team building exercise at work will probably have used a mind map at some point. So it's just kind of a map of a particular subject, an event that's happened to you, something you're grappling with in your personal life, an issue that you're trying to find a resolution for. You're just creating a map of that thing and trying to work your way through it. You can do it visually. You can do it with bubbles with little bits of writing in it. You can do it color coded. There's really no set way of doing it. You can just keep building out from that central idea, whatever it may be. Lists are a very common way to fill in a journal, believe it or not. Lots of people don't have time to write full paragraphs, so they will go for lists. An amazing book, if you want a recommendation on lists, is this book called The Pillow Book by Sai Shonagon. And she was writing in the 11th century in Japan. And she has amazing lists in this book. And they have no real coherent pattern. They just are her observations, her thoughts, however they come to her. It is very much of its time. There are some prejudices in there. So that's something to just flag for the modern day reader. But her list of things, for example, of things that are near yet far, or things that are refined and elegant, are worth reading, and they can provide amazing inspiration for your own lists. It's a really interesting perspective, but it also shows you as a journaler that you don't have to have any coherence to what you're doing. You can just observe the world and your own experience, and it doesn't matter how fragmented that is. You can still create something beautiful, something poignant. That's exactly what she's done, and it's exactly what you can do just through using lists. The other thing that you can do is an essay. This is what we most commonly think of when we think of journaling. We think of writing in paragraphs, and that all those paragraphs kind of have a thread running through them and a conclusion that's reached at the end. This is not for everybody, but if you really enjoyed writing essays at school, then you may find that just the standard essay is the way for you to go, and you don't have to do anything more complicated or crazy than that. Poetry speaks for itself. A lot of people write poetry in their journals. They may never show another living person that poetry. That might just be for them, but it's there. They're creative and they're doing it on a regular basis, it's a form of expression. It's very good for them. Yes, you can write in script. You can write as if you're writing a film or movie script of your life, or maybe a radio script if you're a bit old school like me. You can write a letter, and you don't have to be just addressing people with that letter. You could be addressing a place. Like you could write a letter to New York, or you could write a letter to London, or you could write a letter to a place nobody has ever heard of, or you could write a letter to an inanimate object. You can write to people who are living, you can write to people who are dead. There are no limits. The other thing that you can do, which I think is quite interesting, is a review. This could be anything really. You could just write a journal where you review movies or music, or you could write a review of your day. I think sometimes that would make for pretty entertaining reading, especially if you took on a particularly sarcastic or dry tone as you wrote that review about your day. So that could be an avenue to finding a lighter side to some difficult times in your life. So those are just some common forms of journal entries, and you can use them however you want. As I say, it's not an exhaustive list. There are so many other forms I could have mentioned. If you've got a particular favorite, drop them in the comments below so that other people can get inspiration from what you do in your journal. For now, let's move on to common approaches. People say, I don't have time, I struggle with making space for journaling. And I wonder where it's written that they have to spend all this time on journaling. Absolutely don't. There's lots of different ways of doing it depending on how your life is set up. So, for example, it's not written anywhere that you have to write every day in a journal. There is no rule about that. It is not etched in stone. If you only write in a journal perhaps once a month or once on special occasions, then that's fine. You don't have to do any more than that. So frequency is something that you control as a journaler. Maybe you only write on your children's birthdays. Maybe you only write on Christmas once a year and you have a Christmas journal, and every single year you write a Christmas entry, and that's it. That's your journal. That's fine. Maybe you only write on your birthday, maybe you write on New Year's, whatever it is, that's fine as long as you enjoy it and you get that space for the expression. Obviously, a lot of us are hoping for more frequency than that, but life does get in the way and it is tough. I'll talk a little bit more about how we can manage that at the end of the video, because I'm aware of the fact that there is a certain privilege, particularly I think a white privilege, to sitting down with your journal and writing. Not everyone has that luxury, and I think we do need to be aware of the fact that some people might struggle to make that space. So let's talk about that a little bit later. But frequency is something that you control. Just because you don't write every day or every month, it doesn't mean you're not a journaler. If you've got an idea of when you want to write and you make those dates in your diary and you go and write it, then you're a journaler, and that's fine. That's fine by me anyway. You could also consider length of entry if you're really stuck for time, or you're finding it too arduous to sit and write pages and pages every day. I mean, who has time for that? I don't know who that is. It's certainly not me. So if you want to write a line a day, and there are specific diaries you can buy that are a line a day, or if you want to write 3 sentences a day, you can do that. If you're wanting an example of some shorter entries, from a famous diarist, you could look no further than the diaries of Sylvia Plath, which are available now in most libraries. They're very famous compilations, and some of her entries are very, very short, and that gives hope to all of us because she was an incredibly prolific writer and creator. The other way we can approach journaling is through genre. So I mentioned some of the genres you can write in. Maybe your journal is only going to be full of letters that you've written. Maybe it's only going to be full of dialogue. Maybe it's only going to be full of lists. Whatever it is, you can set that as a challenge to yourself to only write in that one specific genre, whatever it may be. And that way you can decide how long or short it is in any given day. And you can also control the kinds of information that you're putting in there, because you're trying to keep it specific to a kind of form that you're working to. So I think that does provide some good structure if you're looking for an approach to journaling. Topic is another thing that we can use to structure our journals or approach our journals. So you could make it all about food or dining out or cooking. You could make it all about motherhood or perhaps being a spouse or perhaps being single. You could make it about history. You could make it about movies. You could make it about your favorite TV shows. You could make it about Nicolas Cage movies that nobody else has seen. You could make it about anything that you want. Because actually, when I was talking about journaling being good for your well-being before, it turns out that writing or expressing and being creative is good for us, even when we're not talking about our problems. So just writing about your favorite music, for example, that's good for you. So, or, if you're not writing, if you're creating like an art journal, creating a piece of art that's inspired by your favorite music, that is very good for you. So bear that in mind, that you do not have to write about your problems. You can write about any topic that you choose. And sometimes it's a really good idea to redirect your attention to something more positive and focus on the things that we find joy in. If you're looking for a book, I'm giving so many book recommendations today. If you're looking for a book that does just that, focuses on the joy, I don't think you can do better than Delight by J.B. Priestley. It's an amazing book, and the essays are super short. Some of them are only half a page reading, and they're just beautiful, every single one of them. So if you're looking to get a model for how you write about joyful things, J.B. Priestley, Delight, go check it out. And the last one I'm going to talk about is purpose. So you can approach journaling based on your purpose for journaling. So perhaps you want to create a journal that you give your child on its 21st birthday. That's purpose. And so everything that you put into that journal is going to be reflective of something that you want to share with that person. Perhaps you have had a bereavement and you want to create a journal where you put all the memories of that person into the journal, and you try and record as much as you can while it's still very fresh in your mind about that person, so that you've got it forever to keep and you can look back on it and remember them without having to strain your memory in the future. Perhaps you want to just explore something creatively. Perhaps you don't know what the next step is in your life and you want to figure that out. That is a purpose. You can create a journal all about figuring out what is the next step. I think that's a really beautiful purpose as well, because it's got this wonderful exploration of self going on, and it doesn't put pressure on you to have any answers. You can explore in that journal for as long as you want. So that's just a few ways in which you can approach journaling. Again, it's not an exhaustive list. We don't have time for that, but you get the idea. You control the experience of your journal. So do consider these different factors: how often you want to do it, what you want to put in it, what genre you want to write in, and how long you want to be sitting there writing. Or maybe it's not about how long you want to be sitting there writing. Maybe it's how long you've got in your day to write. So as I hinted at before, there are common barriers to journaling. It's a luxury to sit and write about your life. It really is. Some people are out there working 2 or 3 jobs just to provide for their family. Some people don't have the luxury of pens and paper. There's a lot of people out there who have no access to this. Even in countries that consider themselves super affluent, there are people who will not have time or the money to access this hobby. So what can we do when this becomes an issue? I am still speaking here from a place of privilege. I grew up as a working class girl, but I have worked 2 jobs for about a decade. And so I've managed to get myself into a place where I do have time for writing. It took all that time to do it, but I was determined, like it's what I wanted to do with my life. With that in mind, I know how hard it is. And people will say to me, oh, you've worked so hard for what you've got. And yes, that's true. I did work hard for what I've got, but I was also incredibly lucky. There are some people out there who'll work their whole life. They'll work 2 jobs their whole life, and they'll never get to the position that I'm in, i.e. able to pay my bills, able to go on a holiday once or twice a year, able to keep a dog and not have to worry. I can do those things and not worry. By a lot of people's standards, they would say, I'm not rich. I'm not. I just have enough. Now, with the way the world is going, enough is a luxury. And I am super conscious of sitting here and basically saying, everyone can do this. Not everyone can do this. There are barriers. And what we need to do is think collectively as a community how we can help people overcome those barriers that they're experiencing, and support people and cheer people on who don't have the luxury of sitting and writing every day, or struggle to find the time, have a lot of pressures in their life, a lot of commitments, responsibilities that they did not ask for or invite. There's lots of people out there like this. So let's look at the big one, time. I know what it was like when I was caring for my husband during his cancer diagnosis. And before I bit the bullet and earned enough money to hire a cleaner in the house, I was getting up at sort of 6:30 and not being actually able to stop until 10:30 p.m. And that was doing a full-time job caring for my husband and keeping the house in the order that I wanted it. So time is a real issue for some people. All I can say is you don't need more than 10 minutes to write a journal entry. In fact, you don't really need more than 5 minutes if you're writing one sentence or 3 sentences and just recording something small about your life. I would say there were probably days when I couldn't have even carved out 5 minutes to do some journaling in my recent experience. But I did in that time keep a diary where it was just 1 sentence a day. And that's how I kept up with it. Because just before I put my head down on the pillow, after all of that tiredness and exhaustion, I just made myself pick up a pen that was on my bedside table and write in a book 1 sentence about that day, and put the full stop and put my head down on the pillow. To me, it was really important to preserve that space, no matter how small it was, because otherwise I was really scared that I would just disappear into all of this pressure. If you feel that way in your life, if you can feel pressure building and you feel like there's literally no space for you, I do want you to consider the next sentence very carefully. If you don't put your own oxygen mask on first, you will not be able to care for those around you. And this journaling practice, this kind of writing, no matter how small, is a little well-being oxygen mask in itself. Because just preserving this little bit of time for yourself means something. It symbolizes something important. It symbolizes the fact that you still think you are worth that time, even in spite of everything that you're facing. For those of you who are not quite as time pressured, you can luxuriously set a timer for 10 minutes. Okay, if you want to be super luxurious, you can go to 15, but it shouldn't take anything longer than that to create something in your journal, be it a little drawing, a little bit of mixed media, or some writing. Money is another huge barrier. Some people really don't have the spare cash to go out and buy a beautiful notebook or a device that will allow them to write on a kind of blog space, a digital blog space. So with that in mind, if you are in that boat, I would like you to think about the fact that there are free facilities usually in communities. Free Cycle, which is in the UK, where people give away free things. You can ask for things. You can ask around neighbours. You can ask around local churches or community groups. Have they got any spare stationery going? Often the answer is yes. Don't feel bad about taking it. We live in a system that is designed for us to fail financially. If that wasn't the case, if what I was saying wasn't true, then interest rates on savings would be sky high and interest rates on mortgages would be super low. The odds are set against us straight away. So never feel bad about asking for something for free. If it's just sitting there, no one's using it, ask around and see. Have any of your friends got a notebook sitting in the drawer that you can use? Have they got a few spare pens that their kids don't use anymore? Ask. It's fine. And take it. It's fine. Because you wouldn't ask for that unless you really needed it. Consumerism and capitalism are just a trap for everyone. And you don't need to feel bad that you were born into that trap. We all were. And some of us have been lucky enough to clamber our way into a position where we can just about deal with it. And some of us have not been lucky. And definitely look into companies who are giving away free gifts. There are always some companies giving away free promotional notepads. You might as well use that as your journal. It works just as well as any other piece of paper, I can guarantee it. Space is another common barrier that people face. When I started writing, and this was many, many years ago, I had this really rubbish notebook. It was from the local stationers. It cost 30 pence, and a biro pen, which costs about 20 pence. So about 50 pence worth of stationery materials. And I used to write on the bus to college, leant on the bus seat in front of mine, or leant on my knee. So I think one thing that we need to do if we're going to journal is get this idea out of our head that there'll be this perfect day with the perfect journal and the perfect desk and the perfect office space where we sit down with sunlight streaming through the window, and then we will recount all of our thoughts and feelings in amazing detail, and journaling will be this wonderful experience. That's not how journaling works in the real world. You take what you can get, you grab the time that you've got, and whatever means you have to write, you just do it. Whatever means you have to create, you just do it. Those of you keeping an art journal, you know what I mean. You'll use anything as art materials. I know I do. And the same goes for space. You do not need a big spacious office or a big spacious bedroom with lots of expensive throw pillows to write a journal. I promise you, all you need is a pen and paper or a device. That is it. The last thing that we're going to look at is blocks. People get blocked sometimes and they're sitting looking at the page and they don't know what to write. And I've already sort of given you the answer to pushing through that. And that is a free write. Basically writing absolutely anything for 5-10 minutes and not thinking about it. Getting some flow. We're always trying to get into a state of flow when we write journals or anything else. We're trying to get so we don't even notice that we're doing it, so that the words just flow out. Doing a free write and just writing and recording any idea that pops into your head. That is the way usually to get through a block. The last thing that I want to flag are some of the possible sources of inspiration that we as journalers have. And this goes whether or not we're writing or creating mixed media or creating a kind of art journal where we're drawing. Can be any of those things. I think, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but I think that they are useful things to know about. I put newspaper headlines in red with a question mark and an exclamation mark after it, because if you're journaling for well-being, there's a huge question about whether or not you should even visit newspaper headlines, especially right now. So I would say approach that one with caution. If you are in one of those kind of objective frame of mind where you can think objectively about political arguments and write a sort of considered essay or list, then maybe that would be a good space for you to enter. But if it's only going to depress you, if you're only going to start doom scrolling, please don't worry about that one. Just focus on all the others and anything else that inspires you. I really hope this has been an interesting video for you. It's slightly different to the videos that I usually make because I'm usually doing crafting. I wanted to share what you can write in your journals, be it a junk journal, an art journal, or just your standard notebook with a pen, and give you some ideas and inspiration about what could go into them and how you can control your own journaling experience. I don't know how I would have got through life without experiencing journaling and finding journaling. So if this video helps anyone on their way, I'm going to feel amazing about that. Thank you for helping me reach 2,500 subscribers. It's a huge, huge milestone. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.